The Portland metro area's modern public transportation network began its life in January of 1969, when Portland City Council formed the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, or TriMet. Over the last 56 years and change, TriMet's transportation network has expanded to include a large system of bus and rail lines that connect the Tri-County area, with its bus system being the largest component in terms of ridership and coverage. As of 2025, TriMet has around 700 buses spread across 79 lines, with 19 of those being designated frequent service lines, which run every 15 minutes or less during peak travel times. According to PSU's transportation survey data, public transit was consistently the preferred mode of transportation to school for students, with the one outlier being 2020, the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, which unsurprisingly saw record lows for TriMet ridership across the board. There are a number of reasons why off-campus PSU students would lean on public transit. Of course, for students located multiple miles away from campus who don't own a car, it's basically their only option, but it offers a number of distinct advantages even for students outside that category, especially in terms of cost. A single trip on one of TriMet's buses runs $2.80, and that charge will cover the next 2 hours of travel, including connections to other lines. A full day's TriMet pass costs $5.60, meaning that a commuter will only ever have to pay for 2 bus trips in a given day. For a student that attends classes 5 days a week, this would present a maximum cost of $28 per week, or $280 for a 10-week term. Thanks to a partnership with TriMet, subsidized transit passes are available for students that cut that per-term rate nearly in half, with a full-term transit pass purchased directly from PSU costing students $150, though with the caveat that it must be purchased in full up front. For students receiving a Pell Grant, transportation assistance is even better, cutting the per-ride fares directly in half and eliminating the need to prepay for an entire term's worth of transit. Meanwhile, car parking in the downtown area is the most expensive in Portland, and on the higher end, parking in a garage near campus could run upwards of $700 for a 10-week term, depending on how long a student needed to park per day. Student parking passes run considerably cheaper than that, with all-day passes in the neighborhood of $400 depending on the term, and the most time-restricted late afternoon passes as cheap as $127, though obviously that's only an option for students with very specific schedules. For students who come to school less frequently, the gap between per-ride transit costs and these per-term parking passes is only wider. Public transportation also offers environmental benefits. The increased carrying capacity of buses offers a huge reduction of carbon emissions per trip over solo car trips, and TriMet's bus line in particular has begun using renewable diesel in its buses, which according to them has led to a 61% reduction in emissions when compared to their old diesel blend. TriMet's current plan is to transition their bus system to using electric power, zero-emission buses, though they are still in the early phases of testing. Time efficiency is probably the biggest area where the bus system falters in comparison to driving. Especially in the downtown area, the narrow streets and traffic congestion result in buses not being able to move as fluidly, resulting in bus travel times to campus on average being much higher than car travel. TriMet has a couple of projects underway to help ameliorate this issue, including the construction of designated bus-only lanes, called Rose Lanes, on certain lines, and a number of high-traffic intersections being modified to allow buses to drive straight through the intersection in the right turn lane. Even so, at greater distances, a bus trip will often take twice the amount of time as the same trip by car, though in the case of PSU students, that gap may be a bit narrower, considering the added time cost of parking, which is variable, but likely to be significant during peak travel hours. There is also the issue of reliability, with TriMet's bus lines landing around an average of 86% on-time service in the operating year 2024 to 2025. How much that 14% impacts a student's commute will vary depending on factors like distance from school, access to frequent service lines, proximity to the MAX rail system, which itself has only about an 80% average on-time rating, and whether or not they have to make transfers to other lines during their route to school. Additionally, for students who take morning or night classes, buses tend to run much less frequently outside of peak travel hours, with some lines not operating whatsoever in the early morning or late night. While cars are also of course not 100% reliable, there's an entirely different level of control that a car owner has compared to someone reliant on public transport. With proper investment, the problems with TriMet's bus system could be addressed over time, but unfortunately, as of right now, things seem to be trending in the wrong direction. Citing the effect of inflation on operating costs, increasing need for renovation and repairs, a fall-off in ridership due to the pandemic that never fully recovered, and the Oregon legislature's failure to pass a crucial transportation funding bill earlier this year, TriMet is currently staring down the barrel of a projected $300 million budget shortfall that must be closed by July 1st of 2028. As a result, they have eliminated 68 positions, including 27 layoffs of non-union administrative staff, with a plan for further cuts to be rolled out over the next few years. Starting November 30th of 2025, TriMet has reduced the frequency of 4 bus lines after 9 p.m. and slightly reduced the frequency of its Division Flex line after 7 p.m. 4 more lines will see service reductions on March 1st of 2026. Larger cuts are planned for late 2026 and 2027, with TriMet's current early priorities being cutting back bus lines that are close together, reducing the length of the Max Green Line, and stopping funding for other transit agencies. These priorities were identified through responses gathered by TriMet's community outreach, with further outreach planned in 2027 to determine the targets for the next round of cuts. It's unclear how severely these cuts will impact the commute of PSU students specifically, but it will undoubtedly be felt by students with longer commutes and may incentivize a greater reliance on driving personal vehicles.